for the purpose of I take my action and get an advantage out of it, I think the tangibility of that is not particularly apparent here. I think that when I say tangibility of it, the still weight of the result as to when you go is on the die. This doesn't change that. This doesn't say now where you go is more reliant on your abilities. It is still more reliant on the D20 outcome. It is still the likeliness that you're going to, especially, and the quantity of enemies. There are multiple factors that affect what the
Yeah.
value of initiative. I don't think that you really want this in the low tiers ever.
Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're talking about the spell Gift of Alacrity.
Not entirely
You're, you're fast.
zip, I guess. I mean, but you're
Yeah,
not like mechanically faster. You just react faster to initiative rolls.
yeah. You're
Alert.
starting off the gun.
All right, sure.
Bam. Mm.
This is a neat little spell from the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount D&D book. It is a Dunamancy Chronorgy spell. It's also a first level divination. What those other two words mean? No idea. I'm just gonna treat this until proven otherwise. This is just a spell wizards can learn. If that is not true, commoners, let me know how you're supposed to be intended to take this. I just think it's an expanded wizard spell from that book. Anyway, we're gonna treat it like any wizard can take it. It's the first level divination spell, like I said, casting time is a minute. Range is touch. Components are rebels manic. It's got a duration of 8 hours. You touch a willing creature. For the duration, the target can add a d8 to its initiative rolls. That's it.
All
Nice simple
right.
little effect.
Yep. I know you don't value initiative as much as some,
Rope.
uh, probably me included. Well, now let me ask you this first. Is
Mm-hmm.
that because you just don't play with individual initiative? Or
When I do play with individual initiative, and when I have had in the past played with individual initiative, I still don't rate initiative that
okay,
highly.
that was the
As a
question. Yeah.
player, playing as a player with initiative, I don't find that it is the net power to my character is shifting that much if I'm taking roughly the same number of actions anyway. Um, that's why I don't value it that highly. I think this is a really inoffensive way to bump your initiative, though. Like, alert costs a feat. This doesn't cost a feat. So I'm a little bit higher on Gift of Alacrity than I am on some other ways to improve your initiative.
Mm. I don't know for some players or for some characters rather, depending on what they're planning to do with that in that first round of combat, I think initiative it could be a lot more powerful than you give it credit for. I mean, if
I
you're
think there's roughly
getting
two characters that exist that care about going first in initiative, and that
all right,
is Gloomstalker and that is Assassin. And that's literally
okay,
it.
that's not what I was thinking. I mean, I'm thinking if you can, even as a wizard, if you can get a fireball off like before anybody else gets to go, I mean, one, you could take down a bunch of people that would otherwise stab you, or two, you know, you get to fire off your fireball before everybody starts mingling together to fight. It's easier to not hit your own people.
A D8. So if this said you go first in initiative, that would be the case. This doesn't say that, though. This says you
No,
add a D8 to your initiative.
yeah, I
Those are
mean,
different things.
absolutely.
And like this, more realistically, what I think this is doing is at around ninth, 10th level, whenever you feel like you have enough spell slots, this is giving 3 or 4 members of your party a D8 to their initiative if you're not using shield and stuff. The cost here is actually a little bit higher than it looks, but I can see there being groups where you're tired of using the reaction stuff and you want to shift away from it, and you instead move from Silvery Barb to something like Gift of Alacrity as a cheap place to put my spells in the upper tiers to give our team a little bit higher of a boost in combat, to make our lethality be a little bit that much more front loaded in fights, to say I'm more likely to go before some monsters in this coming fight. That's where this is supposed to shine, right?
Hmm. I
Now,
mean,
I
go ahead.
for the purpose of I take my action and get an advantage out of it, I think the tangibility of that is not particularly apparent here. I think that when I say tangibility of it, the still weight of the result as to when you go is on the die. This doesn't change that. This doesn't say now where you go is more reliant on your abilities. It is still more reliant on the D20 outcome. It is still the likeliness that you're gonna, especially and the quantity of enemies. There are multiple factors that affect what the
Yeah.
value of initiative. I don't think that you really want this in the low tiers ever. Would you agree with that?
Not necessarily.
Okay, you're a third
I
level
all right.
wizard. Are you
I'm
spending any
not
spell slots on
saying
this?
absolutely yes. I'm just saying I haven't given it enough thought to say definitively no.
Okay. I would I would hazard a guess that you are better off getting an extra first level spellcast of Magic Missile at levels 3 or lower tables than ever casting this for your Paladin or Rogue. I don't think the tangibility of one action going slightly earlier changes the weight of an encounter's outcome more than one extra first level spellcast can. Or like set up for an encounter, give you an extra, divining tool to detect magic traps, give you an extra any other number of first level effects that could be valuable. I think a shield is going to often be better net actions for you because it prevents you from going down once. That I find is going to be better in the lower tiers than Gift of Alacrity is going to be. Is that a fair assessment, do you think?
Probably. I mean, yeah, I mean, unless this does make the difference to where you don't need the shield because they're all dead already.
Because you cast a third level spell, right? Like you don't have that resource right now.
Yes,
And
yes,
there's
yes.
still the weight of whether or not that fireball happens before the enemies go is still higher weighted by the D20 result than it is by the D8 you're at, right?
Yeah,
You're still the weight is still tremendously on the randomness of the D20 to such a degree that there will be times you roll a 12, you add a 2 from Gift of Alacrity to some level. Let's say even the average, you roll an 11, and this adds a 4. You're at a 15 in your initiative order, maybe a 60 or 17, you have a +2 dex. In an encounter with 6 monsters, meant at least 2 of them are still likely going ahead of you or going around when you're
yeah.
going. So if you're in a situation where you're trying to do like a setup thing, they're still going to separate. They're still going to have some of them get into the front line. They're still going to take other actions. Not like this guarantees any of the setup that you're looking for. And if you
That's
roll a 20,
true.
you might have always gone first anyway. If you roll a 3, you might have go last anyway. And the
Well,
outcome
that's
Gift of Alacrity has isn't
that's
tangible.
something else I was going to bring up. Yeah, I was gonna, think rogues or other high dex characters, but yeah, they're already kind of leaning towards going ahead anyway, so they don't need it. And the ones that are lagging behind, it's no guarantee it's going to make that big a difference. Uh, Still, I don't know.
I
It's all
also
right. So I'm probably with you on low tiers because your first level spell slots are so limited.
yeah, this does have the real benefit that it's got an 8 hour duration. So like if you're if and obviously the more encounters you have, the better this gets in
Yeah.
single encounter kind of environments. This is no thanks. I would much rather have more resources for that encounter, especially cheap resources like shield, like silvery barbs, like absorb elements, right? The bread and butter first level reaction spells. If you're playing like dungeon crawly stuff and you're like, there's going to be 5 encounters and one short rest, this gets a little bit more appealing, right? This goes, now there's a lot more actionable times where we're going to be able to kill a monster before it takes action or gets a third action or whatever. And that can set up longer term durability for a relatively cheap cost. I think the more encounters you expect to have, obviously, the better this gets. This will, I think, serve a fine purpose at tables that are doing classic dungeon crawls to a higher degree than it will at the average cinematic set piece with friends, some beers, one encounter as part of a silly adventure the DM came up with for the weekend, right? I think
Yeah.
that's going to be, those tables are going to be quite poor. At the streamlined adventuring style tables, I think it's going to be a little bit more interesting, but still, it's kind of like it's very marginally increasing your percentage chances of success. And I don't think you necessarily need to shoot those kinds of angles playing a cooperative game like D&D.
All right. Well, there are, I believe, races and classes that allow for shorter long rests, correct?
No. There are
No.
races and classes, like elves are species that get trance. That means over your long rest, you only have to spend 4 hours asleep,
Yeah.
trancing, as opposed to 8. But you still have to spend the whole 8 hours long resting, which means at most light activity. So there isn't really a way to munchkin Gift of Alacrity.
Okay,
Unless
that's what I was
you can, again,
going for.
use it with Warlock spell slots, in which case, then you can take 3 short rests, cast this on the whole party, and have 4 hours of it left over.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. If you got like a down day, have it prepared ahead of time. Yeah. You
I
got
think
4 hours. Everybody, rise and shine. We gotta go to the dungeon right now.
yeah, 3 hours. I think you could do like 3 levels in Warlock alongside a wizard, and then you just use your 2 pack slots over and over and over again. Take 3 long rests before you at the end of your long rest, take 3 short rests. All 6 party members of Gift of Alacrity now for the next 8, 7, 6 hours, right?
Nice.
That is a fine little way to continue being abusive with Munchkin nonsense with Warlocks, right?
Okay.
Oh, who could have guessed pack slots are a busted mechanic that abuse the short rest system?
Um,
This is just a free extra thing.
yeah.
Sure.
Gift of Alacrity. Bump
Yeah,
up your initiative a bit. All
I
right. Well,
hate
all
this
right.
spell.
You hate it. Oh,
I hate it.
I don't hate it. I might be a little. I was never like super keen on it, but I don't know. I always thought it's neat. What about at higher levels when you've just got the slots to spare?
So again, you don't really have the slots to spare because those slots are very critical parts of your sheet for doing the cheap reactive stuff. They are
Hmm.
your shields, your silvery barbs. Like, I think the moment you stack this against the reaction spells, it falls apart in utility. If you're expected to carry the weight of the power as the wizard of the upper tier encounters, I don't want to lose +5 AC on any rounds for that. And this has that potential to occur. Now, maybe one of them just on you if you're trying to be the superhero character, so you go slightly first and you still have 3 slots. All right, maybe. But I don't want to give out more than one of these because I still want absorb elements at my disposal. I still want the silvery barbs at my disposal. I don't want to have to burn that many second level spells unless I care about that resource, right? This resource can matter. Super, super high end stuff. We're talking like you've got a ninth, eighth, seventh, and sixth level slot. Yeah, this comes a lot more free because there's not going to be enough actions for you to use all of your spell slots. So
Yeah.
giving another way to spend them, even if you're spending second and third level slots on shields and stuff, sure. In the mid to upper tiers, I still think this is a little bit tense. At the very high end, yeah, it's pretty good. The reason I don't like it is because I think it's really, really friggin' boring, and I don't like the fantasy it's presenting. I don't think it does the time wizardy stuff that well. I would much rather see more complicated effects to embrace time, but that's just personal preference. My distaste for this isn't entirely based in mechanics. I tried to express there is times when this is fine, despite me not liking the spell as a thematic thing.
I mean, you're talking about like super high end. I'm thinking it could get useful in the middle, where yes, you're going to be sacrificing some other things, but like, if it makes the difference, and you can get like 4 guys trapped in a web, or you can get either the druid's plant growth down early. Uh, I think it could be worth it.
I just think there's a really big asterisk. And I think that determining whether or not Gift of Alacrity is changing an outcome is very difficult to tangibly notice. And for that reason, I think a lot of people are going to put this on their sheet, cast it. Nothing is going to actively change in that the encounter will still go basically as if they hadn't cast it. Maybe now in this example, a goblin goes before you did, whereas otherwise you would have went before the goblin. I usually isn't changing the outcome of the spike growth or the web or the whatever else.
Yeah,
I think this spell is going to be overtaken a lot. I don't value initiative as highly as a lot of other people do. I
that's true.
understand there is value to going first. I also think that this is a resource cost that you are spending to use this. The window in which this is good, I think, is very clearly past like 7th level. That's when it starts to become interesting, and it obviously gets a lot worse if you have competing resources for it, if you are using reaction spells. At the end of the day, this is still probably a 3 because of how incredibly cheap it is to get down.
Okay, well, I was gonna go 3 against your 2, but I guess we're both on 3.
I don't like the spell, but it is objectively like going. It provides a substantial advantage for a low cost.
Yeah. All right. Gift of Alacrity. Thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for joining us. Let us know what you think down in the comments. I recall seeing comments in previous videos we did. Some people mentioned Gift of Alacrity, so I know there are some fans out there. I'm sure there's some naysayers as well. Love to hear your thoughts. Let us know. Otherwise, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.